We're at historic Beverly at the Cabot House, 117 Cabot Street in Beverly. The headquarters of the Historic Beverly, formerly the Beverly Historical Society. We are going to see a very interesting exhibit today on the magic show, which was at the Cabot Theater for 34 consecutive years. And we have some beautiful stuff to show you. So this is Reflections. I'm Fred Hammond. So welcome to the Cabot House and the exhibit. We're inside the Cabot House, the headquarters of Historic Beverly on Cabot Street. We're going to do the show on the magic show at the Cabot Theater. And the lady who put it all together and is quite excited to talk about it today is Abby Battis, our curator and our assistant director. Abby, welcome to BevCamp.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and welcome to Viva la Magia, the man behind Le Grand David and his own spectacular magic company.
So we have a number of posters, and we have a beautiful jacket here. Can you tell us about the jacket?
So when this show started to come together, which was actually last June of 2018, we looked through the objects that we have in our collection here at Historic Beverly, and we have about 150 objects in our collection that relates to Le Grand David. And this piece is really the piece de resistance, because it is the opening costume for Le Grand David. And he would wear it, of course, the David being David Bull. He would wear it for the opening act of the show, and I'm told that he wore it for 20 years. So if you think about a man for 20 years needing to stay a perfect size to fit into this gorgeous costume.
He was a tall fellow, slender fellow.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I think the very intricate details on this piece, we can look a little closer, really adds to it, because there's multiple layers of texture going on here, from the brown sequins and then the gold beading, and then this beautiful mesh overlay that is a whole separate fabric that goes on top of that sequined brown fabric.
Looks like it's got three parts to it.
It does, but
yeah.
It's all one piece.
Yeah.
And this jacket and the shirt are all part of the costume. And we also have David's tri-cornered hat and his matching shoe ornaments in the collection. But those aren't on view at the moment. But looking at this piece, it's important to remember that the magic show came together as a team of cast members, it being a vision of its leader, Marco the Magi, or Cesario Pelez. And this team came together to create something that we all know, but we don't necessarily know the behind the scenes story. So there's an awful lot that goes into a piece like this, because this is all handmade. So the seamstresses in the cast would actually be on constant lookout for fabrics wherever they went during their travels, or there were some stores in Boston that they really enjoyed going to because they had some very rich, lush fabrics. And so they'd come back, speak with their team, the other cast members, as well as feedback from Cesario. And then they would put together these wonderful costumes, all done by hand. And so all of these finishings and whatnot are done by actual cast members. And we're going to see throughout this show, everything is really a team effort.
We're going to go up the stairs here, but perhaps we could shoot that large poster at the top.
Yes.
Where we have the Grand David and Cesario. And who were the two women, do you know?
So those would be the Bull girls. That would be Katie and Webster Bull's daughters, Martha and Marion.
Is that right?
Yes. So And they would have, you see some live animals there in that painting, and they would actually have some live animals as part of their shows. But as we walk up the stairs, you'll see these posters, including that painting that we're looking at. All of the artwork is done by the company artist, Rick Heath. And Rick would work with Cesario to basically create all of these beautiful artworks. We have well over 60 posters in our own collection. And then there are some of these pieces are on loan from the artist, Rick Heath, as well as Katie Bull. And you can see, if we look at the painting, we can actually see down in the corner here, the signature of the company artist, Rick Heath. And you'll see that the name Cesario goes right through that. And that's because Rick worked with Cesario to complete all of the works that he did for the company. So again, another team effort. So basically, it started out relatively small, but grew rather quickly and ended up with about 70 members at its peak, 60 to 70 members. And so they all would have a role on stage eventually, even if they didn't want to. And then they also would have an awful lot of time and experience behind the scenes, whether it's painting scenery or painting posters, designing the backdrops, doing the beautiful costumes. I mean, all of the hand detail that went into everything that you saw in that show was all done by the cast. And that was something that was really overwhelming for me when I started to research the show, that it wasn't just a one-man production, and that they weren't going out and purchasing things, that they really wanted to put their own stamp on everything that they did. And so even though you could see things from off stage, from afar, what you were seeing was so finely detailed, and that's something that we'll take a look at when we look closer at the costumes. So this is a pretty neat display. We have these photographs that are on loan to us from Rick, and these are some of the pieces that were created as actual magical illusions. And so he documented everything that the cast would put together. And so you see just a handful of some of the illusions that were used throughout the time of the show. The one that is most interesting to me is the one that's right up here of the cards. That was actually created during the blizzard of '78. Rick was able to put that together in just 3 days because he was housebound. But to think that that is a full-size oriental screen that he completed in 3 days is just mind-blowing. But everything for these was done by hand. So creating all of the pieces from the wood to laying out the design on the actual wood itself and then painting them was all done by hand by the cast. So this is where we move into the glitz and glam of the exhibit, because we'll be looking at all of the costumes that really resonate with the audience, because that's the first thing that you see as the cast comes out on stage. And so this one, I think, is the heaviest adorned in sequins. And the interesting thing about this one, this kind of threw me for a loop for quite a while, because it has so many hidden buttons. The seamstresses did such a great job in the detail of hiding the buttons so that you can see it's over here and it lays right down into this blue, and the button is also blue. And so I couldn't see it for weeks. I couldn't find that button. And so this whole thing just kept hanging open and hanging open until I finally figured it out. But the interesting thing about a lot of these costumes is that there's some little hidden intricacies going on with them, whether it's hidden pockets or a way that they are closed or the way that they open. You know that there's some form of illusion that would be taking place within the costume itself to kind of add to what's going to happen on the stage. For example, there's some form of opening here, yet I'm not 100% sure of what it would be. It's definitely not a pocket. So it makes me think at one time something has come out of there to create a magic illusion.
What about this one here?
So it wasn't just the men that got all of the glitz and glam. The women had absolutely beautiful costumes. So this is just one of the many that was created. Again, completely done by hand. So you can see how the intricate details of cutting of the fabric to the sequins, to the trim, and then it falls down into a absolutely beautiful cascade of ruffles. And so compared to all of the other costumes that I've seen in books and whatnot, this is a little tame for what the women were wearing, because most of the costumes, everything that I've seen has always come with matching shoes, headwear, and the women's headwear was always so big, so big and up off their head.
How about this over here now?
Yes.
The portrait.
So this is the only portrait that we have of Cesario Pelez dressed in street costume. And I say street costume because I always think of him as Marco the Magi. But this portrait was done by Rick Heath. You'll see that there's no signature on there by Rick because this portrait was actually completed for Cesario's funeral. So the only other time that it has been on view is at Cesario's funeral. And so I was really pleased to have this come in and donated, and he spoke to me quite often during the making of this show. He was really looking over me and kind of directing my decisions.
He was your professor at Salem State?
He was. I had Cesario for 5 classes at Salem State, so it's an honor to do this show, and it's nice to have this piece here in homage to him. So this room basically came together as a costume and magic trick space. On view, you see an awful lot of the illusions and the mystery that goes into what it was like to be on stage. And so this room kind of came together as a way to display that on-stage presence. And it was really fascinating. You can see here, we can start over this way. We have a little bit of a seating area where you're able to sit in old Cabot Theater seats, generously donated to us just a couple weeks before the exhibit opened from the Cabot Theater. Because some of you might know that they've just redone their balcony, and so they generously provided us with a donation to our collection of these beautiful seats. So you can come in and have a seat in the old Cabot Theater seats, and we have some different videos that we put on for people to enjoy. One specifically goes to the very early years of the company back in 1977. So then, as we walk this way, I love this little guy. He's kind of the hidden gem. When I saw him in a cast member storage area, it took me right back to my childhood because I had attended the shows. And so I can remember this monkey or camel in a basket that was performed by a lot of the clowns in the cast, and he'd sing and whatnot. So I thought it was a great addition to kind of show that it wasn't just all about the magic, but it was also about the fun. So we've got the camel here waiting to greet everybody as they sit down in the Cabot seats. So we come over to this case, and in this case there are two illusions, one being the linking rings, and the linking rings are actually one of Marco the Magi's big tricks. Everybody can remember seeing the linking ring trick. It was a very, very basic trick, but the way that he performed it up on a table by himself in the light just made it so breathtaking. And a little behind the scenes thing with all of these tricks, when they came to me to be put on display, I had to learn how to use the tricks so that I wasn't going to put any magic behind the scenes stuff out there. And so Katie Bull handed me a bunch of linking rings, and this is a set that I can't figure out. So I still have no idea how these linking rings work, but, and I know that I haven't kind of shown the behind the scenes way of this how this working, because I can't even do it. So that's the only trick that I have no idea how to perform it. The one next to it is another piece from our collection. And I think it's important to say now, I had said earlier that we had have about 150 objects in our collection that pertain to the LeGrand David, the Magic Company. And there's less than a dozen that are on view in this exhibit because the cast members were just so excited to be able to participate in this, and they were really excited about the vision for the show. And so almost everything that you've seen up until this point, except for David's costume downstairs and this beautiful piece here, is all on loan from cast members. This piece is basically considered a sword through the body trick. And so there would be a cast member who's through here, and then the sword would go right through their torso. It was so scaled back compared to what we normally would see in magic illusions, of where, you know, the beautiful assistant would lay down in a box and then there would be some very large blades that go through the box or whatnot. This is so simple because it's just a basic stockade that then goes right through the body with one sword. And so again, this piece is a one-of-a-kind piece. The cast created it, and it's based on these ideas that David and Cesario came up with on how to really scale down the illusion of the magic and make it more lively, more exciting, and more questioning. And that's something that is so exciting about all of the tricks in this show, is that you know that they're one of a kind, you know that they're based off of something that usually happens in the magic field, the illusion field, but they've made it so that it's their own, and that's pretty amazing. And now we're starting to get into a little bit of the history of Cesario himself. And so Cesario, growing up in Cuba, was very, very connected to magic early on in his childhood, and really wanted his own magic show, performance show. And thankfully, that dream became a reality in 1977 with the show at the Cabot Street Theater. And we're very, very lucky to have one of the very first costumes that he wore in one of the early productions, and that's what you see here. The thing that really captured Cesario when he was younger is the magician Fu Manchu would visit Cuba, and that is really where it captured his mind and his excitement. And so it's Fu Manchu that he tends to kind of go back to throughout his magic career. But this piece itself is an homage to Fu Manchu, and we have a picture of Cesario actually wearing it in one of the first shows. And he has on a false beard and false sideburns to basically, again, honor Fu Manchu. And word has it that the beard was getting in the way of his magic tricks. You can see there he's got his linking rings, and that the sideburns were getting way too hot under the spotlights. So it wasn't long before he pulled that beard off and the sideburns off, and he performed on his own in this beautiful costume. Fast forward a couple of decades, and we go over to another beautiful piece that Cesario wore. This is all handmade by the seamstresses in the cast. There's 3 pieces here, and I think it's important that you take a look at these details. There's a button placket that would keep the jacket closed. But then everything inside is beautifully lined. Now, to think, the seamstresses knew that most of this stuff would not be seen from the crowd because the players are up on stage, the lights are on them, everything is sparkly, everything is bright. The audience isn't going to see details like this, but everything was so intricately finished by the seamstresses because everything had to be perfect. So all of these costumes are beautifully lined. And then you look at the absolutely beautiful detail that goes into, there's some very beautiful patchworking that has taken place here with multiple fabrics, and then all of the embroidered detail here with these additional trimmings. So you see quite a big change from that Fu Manchu costume that we just stepped away from to now. Marco is definitely up on stage. He's the center of the spotlight, and all eyes are on him. So you see an awful lot more of the glitter and the glitz that needs to be shown on stage. We're really excited to have this group of photography up here. These are photographs of Marco in full costume. You can see a couple of him doing the linking rings, and then there's a beautiful headshot of him. The photographs were a limited edition print that was put out, and the photographs themselves are done by the cast photographer Ralph Turcotte. And so we're very excited to have these on loan to us because it just worked perfectly with this beautiful costume next to it. And we travel over here to this pairing. Again, an awful lot of sparkle. But you can imagine from the back of the Cabot Theater, there's no missing anybody who would have this on stage in the spotlight. But you can also see there's an awful lot of detail here with the difference in contrast of the trimming, the finish of the bell sleeves. And I think this is probably the most apparent Oriental influence that you can see, from the mandarin collar that you have up here to the kimono draped sleeves. And this would definitely be a kimono, so there would have been something worn underneath it. An awful lot of the Oriental influence did come into the show because of Cesario's exposure to Fu Manchu early on, and his love and his passion for everything that went into the design of Fu's shows. So you see the Oriental influence here, and then we've got a very small box trick that is up here that is on view, not just because it's an actual magic illusion, but also because of the detail in the Oriental imagery. So you've got the image on the front as well as the beautiful images on the side. Again, I can't say it enough. I find myself repeating it an awful lot, but this is cast made. cast-made. You know, they're not going out to buy things. They're going to create what they needed that fit perfectly for their show. And they're doing it as a team, as a full unit, with guidance from Cesario at the helm. But they've all come together to create what you've seen here. And so to see a small piece like this and the fine detail that goes into it really speaks to the time and the energy that this cast put into putting things like this out into the world and entertaining the community at large. So we can move right over to what I think is my most favorite piece in the whole entire show. This is called the Blue Rabbit, and it's based off of an illusion that is done in the magic world called the Fraidy Cat Rabbit. Now, the Fraidy Cat Rabbit is about the size of a sheet of paper, so 8 by 10, 8 by 11. As you can see, this one is an awful lot bigger. And everybody who sees this, specifically who sees the bunny, can remember this trick from the show. And so what would happen is Cesario would work with this, and there's multiple bunnies inside the trick. So through illusion, he makes you realize there are multiple bunnies in there, and where is it going to end up? But as a white bunny. I can't really reveal any of the tricks. That's why it's all taped up here. But it's an absolutely beautiful piece. It's one of a kind. It was made by the company artist, Rick Heath. He did all of the assembly, all of the painting. It is a very, very precious piece because it's difficult to move. It's actually on ball bearings. So it can really tip over easily, very delicate, but it is absolutely stunning to see. And at our upcoming annual meeting, I'm actually going to open it for everybody to see inside. So it'll be neat to show people what it looks like. And we do actually have a photo of Cesario using the piece in one of the shows.
And I understand, Abby, we're going to have a big show, a big party when the thing's over.
Yes.
And I'm going to get a chance to meet some of these people.
Exactly. We have a couple of projects or programs coming up. One specifically with David Bull, the actual Le Grand David will be coming in, and Rick Heath will also be joining us. That is coming up during school vacation week in April, so you can find information on our website at historicbeverly.net.
Good.
And we also have a Facebook page where we announce all of our events. So you can definitely connect with us, and we hope that you come to the many programs that are coming up about this beautiful show.
Well, thank you again, Abby, and I think we might end our show with this drawing of David and Cesario on one of their traditional billboard newspaper advertising they did to promote the show. They also showed, as some of us will remember, they showed a lot of good movies.
Yes.
And so consequently, it was a busy place for a long period of time. The picture we didn't show, Abby, and the one I remember was, I think, Time magazine, and they're performing in front of either the Capitol or the White House.
It's in front of the White House. They were invited to the White House 7 times during their 35-year run. So they have some really great national and international history behind them. So 7 times at the White House, and then they are still in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the longest running residential stage magic company in the world.
Well, thank you again, Abby. And
thank you.
This is Reflections. I'm Fred Hammond. Thank you for joining us. And come down to the Cabot House and take a look at the exhibit.